Kakadosh Boker Tov. We're continuing on today's daf, which is daf Ayin Bet 72. If you want, what we're just going to do is just to understand what's going on. The Gemara is going to explain the former part of the Mishnah, the Reisha of the Mishnah, that the Pesach, Sheshachtu. So Kakadosh, what we're trying to explain is that if you remember, the former part of the Mishnah was the talking about the Pesach, that they slaughtered it Shelo Lishmo, which means not for the sake of the Korban Pesach, but rather for a Shlamim. So if somebody did that on Shabbat, they're going to be Chayav Chatat. Okay, so that means if somebody came and they slaughtered a Korban Pesach, but they didn't do it as a Korban Pesach, they brought it, for example, as a Shlamim. So what's going to happen? They're going to be Chayav Chatat, a sin offering. So says the Gemara, B'may Askinan Ayin Bet Amud Aleph, 72a1. Okay, Ayin Bet Amud Aleph. Says the Gemara, B'may Askinan, what are we dealing with? If you're going to tell me that he made a mistake, which means that he thought that this Pesach was another Korban, and therefore he slaughtered it for another Korban. So Shemat Mina, so we learn from here, Akira beta'ut havya akira. That if a person comes and they were making an akira, which means they uprooted the name of a Korban because they did it shelo lishma, they didn't do it for the sake of the sacrifice. So even though it was made by mistake, it's considered an akira. That means just like a person comes and he changes it without realizing it, it's going to be a good akira. It's going to be a good uprooting. Okay, we're at the top of Ayin Bet Amud Aleph, starting the new daf. Yeah, so basically what happens is, again, one more time, our Mishnah said somebody came and they took a Korban Pesach, a Pesach offering that you would bring on Pesach, and they slaughtered it shelo lishma, not for the sake of the Korban Pesach, but rather for the sake of a Shlamim or another Korban. What happens afterwards? It says the Gemara, since they did it on Shabbat, says the Mishnah, Chayav Chatat. He's obligated a Chatat offering, a sin offering. So says the Gemara, what are we dealing with? If you're telling me that he made a mistake, which means that he thought that this Korban Pesach was another Korban, and then he slaughtered it, so it comes out, Akira beta'ut havya akira. So if a person makes a mistake, because he thought that this animal was from another sacrifice, and then he did do it as another sacrifice, it's going to be a mistake. Ella, but rather, be'oker. Obviously, we're talking about that you cannot tell me that you're doing the shechita shelo lishma, right, with the kavanah, knowing though that you knew it was a Korban Pesach and still you did it for another one, right? So that means what we're trying to deduce is that our Mishnah is talking about a mistake. Toeh. Toeh means you made a mistake. You didn't realize. You thought that this animal was another sacrifice, right? And you didn't realize, okay? But we're not talking about that you were doing it okay, that you were mamash. I know it's a Korban Pesach and I'm still going to do it as another sacrifice. Now remember, on Shabbat, you're not allowed to slaughter, you're not allowed to do shechita even to another sacrifice, which is not part of the things which are doche Shabbat, obviously. So Ema Seifa, let's see the Seifa. Ushar kol ha-zivachim sheshachtan l'shum Pesach, right? All the other types of zivachim, all the other types of sacrifices, which they slaughtered it for the Pesach, im enam re'uyim, if they're not fitting, chayav, it's going to be obligated. Im reuyinen, now if they are going to be fitting, Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatat, Rabbi Yoshua poter. So this was also part of the Mishnah. Rabbi Eliezer says you're going to be chayev chatat, and Rabbi Yoshua says you're going to be potur. You're going to be patur. Okay, you guys remember that from the Mishnah, where the Mishnah brought down this machloke between them. If you remember, we brought down what was the reason why. He said because he comes and he says this was in the Mishnah, where the Mishnah says. Because he says Toah b'dvar mitzvah, and he did a mitzvah, is going to be chayav chatat. And Rabbi Eliezer, right? Rabbi Eliezer says you're going to be chayav chatat, and Yeshua says if you make a mistake in doing a mitzvah, you're going to be patur. You remember there was a concept that if you thought you were doing a mitzvah and then you did something wrong on Shabbat, are you chayav or are you patur? That's the question, right? So imagine somebody comes, they thought it was permitted, and then they did it, and all of a sudden, are they going to be obligated a chatat offering or not? So it's a machlok Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. So says the Gemara, if you're telling me now that the person did it bechavana, which means that he purposely came and he changed this Korban Pesach to another sacrifice, meaning it wasn't to'eh, it was oker. It was mamash, he did it purposely. So mali reuyin, mali she'en reuyin. What does it mean then if it's going to be fitting or it's not fitting? If it's fitting for a Korban Pesach or not fitting for a Korban Pesach? At the end of the day, right, you did it purposely. Right? So therefore he's coming and saying, obviously we're not talking about Reuyin. So he comes and he says, Ela pshita, but rather for sure, beto'eh. right? For sure, we're talking about the Seifa is talking about he made a mistake. So says the Gemara, Reisha beoker v'Seifa betoeh. Are you going to tell me that the former part of the Mishnah is talking about that you did it purposely, and the latter part of the Mishnah is talking about where you did it accidentally? Doesn't make sense. Usually when we have a Mishnah, it's only normal that the former part, the first part of the Mishnah, the last part of the Mishnah is talking about the same concept, right? It doesn't make sense to say, listen, the first part of the Mishnah is talking about that you did it purposely. The second part of the Mishnah is talking about where you did it accidentally. If you don't say anything in the Mishnah has to be very clear. You understand? Like, it cannot just be there. You understand? It has to be clear. So you can't just say that, right? So therefore, the Gemara is asking, what? Are you going to tell me that the former part of the Mishnah is talking about where you made where you did it purposely, and the latter part is talking about where you made a mistake? Amar Rabbi Avin, says Rabbi Avin, yes, that is the case. That means even though it is the chuk to say that, it's very pressing to say that, and it's not nice to say that, but once in a while we have to say it. And therefore, that's what we're saying. We're saying the Reisha is talking about that you did Akira, and the Seifa is talking about where you made the mistake. Toeh. So the first one, the Reisha is talking about where you purposely changed it from a Korban Pesach to another Korban. And the latter part of the Mishnah, which is the last part of the Mishnah, is talking about where you did it accidentally.
It's consistent to something. So
yes, but it wasn't. But we had to change from the purposely and accidentally, meaning a mistake. It wasn't. It's accidentally, meaning it was a mistake. Okay. So Ashkeche Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef l'Rabbi Avu tavakai beuchlusa di'inshe. So Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef, he found Rabbi Avu that he was in a very big group of people. So imagine right now Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef, he finds Rabbi Avu and he's in a big group of people. There's a huge group of people and he's there in the middle. Amarle, so says Rav Yitzchak bar Yosef to Rabbi Avu, matniti mai. What's the explanation of our Mishnah? Is our Mishnah oker or toeh? Is our Mishnah where a person made the mistake? Toeh, he made a mistake, or he did it purposely. He was okay. He did it purposely. So Amarle, so he comes and he says, Reisha beoker, v'seifa betoeh. The first part of the Mishnah is oker. He did it purposely, and the last part of the Mishnah is that he made a mistake, just like what we said right now. So Tana mine 40 zimnin. He learned it from him 40 times. Why? So then it becomes like it's inside of his pocket. Meaning from here, we gave an entire Dvar Torah this once, if you remember, that in order for us to remember something, you should learn it 40 times. Because when you learn something 40 times, it's like it's in your pocket. It's like it's in your pocket. Meaning that just like it's in your pocket, meaning you know very, very well, you know what's in your pocket now, right? You probably you know what's in your pocket, right? You have your wallet, your phone, the this, the that, you understand? But a person has to realize that. So therefore, what happens is that a person has to understand the entire concept that, right, when you learn something 40 times, it's like it's in your pocket. Yeah, so I want you guys to do Chazara Masechet Pesachim 40 times. Yeah, that's it, 40 times. You want it in your pocket? 40 times. Yeah, that's what he did. He learned it from 40 times. By the way, you should know, there were even Gedolei Olam that used to do that. I remember, I think it was by the Stipler, the Chazon Ish, and others, that all of a sudden they learned a new halacha, and they wanted to remember it right away. They just repeated it 40 times. Again and again and again and again and 40 times. Once you do it 40 times, it's in your pocket. Yeah?
As opposed to 101.
No, 101 is that you'll never forget it. 40 times it's in your pocket. You can still forget it, but it's in your pocket. So that was the shiur that we gave, because we said that the Gemara in Masechet Eruvin, the Nun Daled Amud Bet, I learned it 40 times. That's why I remember it. Yeah? So there, the Gemara Masechet Eruvin says that a person has to learn minimum 4 times. Right? And they learn it from Moshe Rabbeinu. The Moshe Rabbeinu came in and he taught it to Aaron. Then Aaron's children came in and then Moshe Rabbeinu taught it to the children, but Aaron was there. Then Moshe Rabbeinu told it to the Zekinim. Then Moshe Rabbeinu left and Aaron taught it to his children. Then Aaron taught it. That means each one learned it 4 times and each one was taught it 4 times. Everything was always multiples of 4. Then the Gemara says over here that if you learn it 40 times. And then the Gemara says that if you learn it 101. So the Maharsha says, on the Gemara Masechet, this is Moed Katan, if I remember correctly, where it says about the 101, that if a person learns it for 101 times, he doesn't forget it. There he comes and he says it's like Kohen Levi Israel. It's multiples of 4 and multiples of 10s. And then it says 101. 101 is Lemala, meaning it's like above all. So therefore, what happens is that when a person comes and they learn it 4 times, that's 1 multiple. That's 1 time. When you learn it in multiples of 10, that's another time. So when you do 40, it's 4 with 10. It's like 4 groups of 10. So therefore, right? Or 10 groups of 4, whichever way you want to look at it, that it's basically you're doing it so many times, you're going to start remembering. When you do it 101 times, then you remember. Now, how do you know that also? There's a beautiful kliyakar that the kliyakar says, I don't remember exactly now where the kliyakar is. I think it's in Parashat Dvarim, but I could check again, right? The kliyakar says that the numerical value of zachar, which is zocher, to remember, right? Zocher is how much? Resh Kav Zayin. How much is Resh Kav Zayin? 227. The numerical value of shachach, to forget, is how much? 328. The difference between zachar, to remember, and to forget is 101. So when you learn it 101 times and you add it on to zachar, to zocher liskor, right? To remember, so then you won't shachach, you won't forget it anymore. Yeah, that's the kliyakar. You heard that, Beno?
Yes.
Beautiful chidush, no?
Amazing. Yes.
It's a beautiful chidush, as you know that is. So you learn it 101 times, you won't forget it. And that's why the Gemara says, if you learn it 101 times, you don't forget. There's somebody that's called Shas Kohen, of Yoshua Kohen. He wrote a sefer called Kerem Yoshua. He learned the Shas more than 101 times, and he taught like his certain way of doing it. And he does the pinpoint test. I was by him, myself personally. He comes, he opens up Gemara Masechet Batra, which Batra is actually the biggest Gemara in Shas. He didn't take an art school. He took a regular Gemara. Yeah, he comes and he opens up like this, the little tiny corner over here. We're not even talking about the Gemara. We're talking about what was written here. And he comes and he says, the daf that it is there is one of the membranes of your body. What was it? Daf memchet, the moach, the brain. Right? He does a pinpoint test. He could put a needle right here, and he could tell you the word on every single daf for the next 10, 20 dapim. He'll just tell you. Right here, it's arba'in. Go the next daf, it's going to be, I have to turn on the art scrolls, you have to pay much more, turn much more pages. Yeah, it's going to be bae. Yeah, another few dapim, it's going to be amar. Like that, going through. Pinpoint test. He knows all of Shas by heart. Why? He learned it 101 times. Yeah, that's the way it is. You learn it, you'll remember. Yeah, fine. Says the Gemara. Yeah, tonight we learned in the Mishnah. Amar Rabbi Eliezer, says Rabbi Eliezer, Ma'im Pesach shemutar lishmo, kesheshina et shemo chayav, zevachim shehen asurim lishman, kesheshina et sheman, eno din sheyeh chayav. He comes and he says, 1 second, I'm going to ask you a question on this concept that you just said, that the Reisha is talking about that you did it purposely, and the Sefer is talking about that you made a mistake. He says Rabbi Eliezer, if the Pesach, which is permitted when you do it with its name, if you changed it, now all of a sudden you're going to be chayav. That means a korban pesach. You're allowed to slaughter it on Shabbat if you do it for a korban pesach. But if you changed it for another korban, you're going to be chayav. So zevachim shenasurim nishman, for a regular korban that you're not allowed to sacrifice on Shabbat. Meaning, obviously, we're not talking about the tamid that we already learned in the Gemara that you're supposed to sacrifice on Shabbat. But we're talking about another sacrifice that are you going to tell me now? So he says, right? Are you going to tell me now? Right? He says, Kesheshinait Sheman, right? Obviously, if you did do it loli shema, enodin shechayav, for sure it's going to be chayav. Now, if you're going to tell me that the Reisha is talking about where you made a mistake, where you did it purposely, and the Sefer is talking about where you made a mistake, halodami, you can't compare it to Reisha be'oked v'Sefer betoeh. You can compare both cases, because the Reisha, where we're talking about the Pesach that you did it loli shema, that you're chayav, we're talking about that you did it purposely, right? Which is not to'eh, it wasn't a mistake. And the Sefer, where we're talking about that you did other sacrifices for a Pesach, right? We're talking about where you made a mistake. So therefore, you cannot compare both cases. Meaning, you are coming and you're trying to tell me a kal vachomer. What's a kal vachomer? If the korban Pesach, that on Shabbat itself, you're allowed to bring a korban Pesach on Shabbat? Yes. If I change it from a korban Pesach to a Shlamim, am I chayav? Yes, I'm chayav, because, right, I did a mistake. But I didn't do a mistake. I did it purposely, according to what we just mentioned. But the Reisha, the first part of the Mishnah was talking about purposely. What's the Seifa? The Seifa, the latter part of the Mishnah, was another sacrifice. Am I allowed to bring another sacrifice on Shabbat if it's not a Tamini, not a Musaf? No. Right? If I now bring it as a Pesach, right, it's a mistake also. But the Seifa was somewhat a mistake. He wasn't talking about purposely. So how could you come and start comparing both cases? One of them was talking about what you did it purposely. One is talking about you made a mistake. So says the Gemara, Right? Says the Gemara, Rabbi Eliezer, he comes and he says, Rabbi Eliezer, he comes and he says, Lo shanile. They did not learn it. What does that mean? He says over here that the Kal Vachomer was that there's no difference between oker and toeh. There's no difference between whether a person uprooted it purposely or he made a mistake. It's all the same halacha. Because that's the toeh b'dvar mitzvah, or toeh, it's all the same. And therefore, you could still make the Kal Vachomer. Meaning, even though there is a difference between the Reisha and the Seifa, the fact that one of them was mistakenly and one of them was you purposely did it, still there's not going to be a difference, and you're allowed to make the Kal Vachomer. So, as the Gemara, Rabbi Yoshua d'shani lishnei lachi. However, though, according to Rabbi Yoshua, that he does make such a differentiation between oker and toeh, between doing it purposely and making a mistake. So why don't we just answer that, and that's it. Say a Pesach that you did shelo lishma, you're going to be chayav because you did it purposely, and the other sacrifices that you're going to be patur is because you did it accidentally. And just answer it like that. Why do you need another answer? Just answer like that. So he comes and he says, right, like this. He says, "Ve'achi kamale." This is what he says. Ledidi, according to me, lo dami, it's not comparable. Why? Because reisha be'oker ve'seifa be'toeh. The first part of the Mishnah is talking about where you did it purposely, and the Seifa is talking about where you did it accidentally. The Didach, but according to you, lo, right? Ima Marta bePesach, right? It's not going to say that. Why? Because if you're going to say that by the Pesach, that you change it to something which is asur, are you going to say that by the Zivachim that you change it to something which is permitted? Which means the Korban Pesach was completely different because you're allowed to do a Korban Pesach. So when I took a regular sacrifice and now I changed it for a Korban Pesach, it's obvious that I'm going to make such a mistake because you're allowed to bring a Korban Pesach on Shabbat. So therefore, it makes sense. However, though, the other way around, no. If I'm going to take a Korban Pesach and make it into a Shlamim, are you allowed to bring a Shlamim on Shabbat? No. So for obviously, you're going to be Chayav. It only makes sense you're going to be Chayav. But the other way, no. Because the other way, you're doing it as a Pesach. So even though you made a mistake, but you brought it as something which is permitted to bring on Shabbat. Amen. So Amar lo Rabbi Eliezer, says Rabbi Eliezer, Emurei tzibur yochichu shehem mutarim lishman ve'ashochet lishman chayav. He says, yeah, but I've got a proof against you. What's the proof against you? The emurim of the tzibur. Remember, the emurim are the limbs of the animal that goes onto the mizbeach, onto the altar. Yeah, they are the emurim that go onto the mizbeach. If when they are from the tzibur, they are going to prove to you that they are actually going to be permitted to bring onto the mizbeach. V'ashochet lishman chayav. But if you slaughter for it, you're going to be chayav. Which means like this. If you remember, we brought this down in the Gemara before, that look how great it is, a mitzvah, that you do it in the proper time. Because even though the imurim could be brought at nighttime, which it's not Shabbat anymore, you're allowed to bring it on Shabbat in itself. Why? Because it's a mitzvah to bring it right now. So therefore, right, in its proper time, and therefore, look what great mitzvah it is. So says the Gemara, but if I'm going to slaughter a sacrifice for the imurim, I'm going to be chayav. Means I come and I take a sacrifice, I slaughter it, and then I'm going to bring the limbs on the mizbeach. I'm chayav. Why? I slaughtered it on Shabbat. Are you allowed to do slaughtering on Shabbat if it's not one of the korbanot that you're allowed to? No. So therefore, you see from here that the emurei matzibur, even though they themselves are permitted to bring onto the mizbeach, you're not allowed to slaughter it. And if you do slaughter it, you're going to be chayav. Amar lo Rabbi Yoshua, says Rabbi Yoshua, no, don't bring me a proof from there. Im amarta be'emurei tzibur sheken yesh lehem kitzba, tomar b'pesach yesh lehem kitzba. Emurim of the tzibur, there's a set amount. It's a fixed amount. It's not like Korban Pesach. Korban Pesach, you remember we were speaking about, it could be thousands, hundred thousands. You know how many thousands and thousands of Korban Pesachs it could be? You remember when they said that they counted the Kifayim Yotzei Mitzrayim, doubled in Yotzei Mitzrayim, when they started counting all the kidneys, the thing, then we started to know, how did you do that? You have to put all of them together, you have to burn them at the same time. They were counting, they wanted to find out how many Jews were there. And remember, in every single Korban Pesach, you could have 10 people there minimum. That's what the Gemara said. So imagine how many people in the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach, there's no fixed amount. There's thousands of that. You can compare that to Emurim, which is a fixed amount of what's going to go on the Mizbeach. So says the Gemara, are you going to tell me that any time that you do have a fixed amount, Rabbi Yoshua is going to be, he's going to say you're going to be chayav chatat, just like you're going to be chayav in a normal case. Right? What about a brit milah of children? Do you do a brit milah on Shabbat? Yes, you do brit milah on Shabbat. Tiesh lehem kitzba. They also have a kitzba. Utznanim, we learned in the Mishnah, right? It says, Misha yulo shtet nikot, echal mulo achar Shabbat, echal mulo b'Shabbat. What happens if a person has two children? One of them he has to do brit milah on Shabbat, and one of them he has to do brit milah after Shabbat. Yeah, either a moel, or you could talk about also two parents for the same family. How? I'll give you the example. Very simple. Let's say there were twins, but there was no C-section. Because remember, C-sections, right? Cesarean sections, they do it does not push off Shabbat. They have to do it on it has to be a natural birth, right? Yeah, natural birth. Okay, so what happens? Let's say the birth started with the first child, it was still Shabbat. The second child, it was Sudash Shlishi. Yeah, the second child was 20 minutes later. It was already after Ben Shmashot, almost by the Shkia time, or whatever, like already after Shkia by the Ben Shmashot, almost night time. So what do you have to do? You have to do it on Sunday. So the first child, you're going to do Brit Milah on Shabbat. Second child, you're going to do it on Sunday.
But if it's a C-section by emergency, yes, it's allowed.
No. One more time. We're not talking about allowed. You could always do a C-section by emergency. We're talking about Brit Milah. The Brit Milah of a C-section does not push off Shabbat. I mean, even if it was an emergency or it wasn't an emergency, it doesn't matter. A C-section, which is done on Shabbat, next Shabbat, there's no Brit Milah. You do the Brit Milah Sunday. Capish? Yeah, you have to do it the next day.
8 days.
There, it's an exception to the rule. Be 9. It's an exception to the rule because anything which is not dochesh Shabbat, right? Anything which is not dochesh, Brit Milah only is dochesh Shabbat. It only pushes off on Shabbat if it's going to be done in a natural way. If it's not a natural birth, no. By the way, you should know the same halacha applies to pidyon ben. If it's C-section, no pidyon ben.
Yeah, of course. You know.
Yeah, no pidyon ben at all. But it has to be peter rechem, the uterus has to open up the womb. Yeah, and it's not opening up the womb. Okay. So again, one more time. It says the Gemara, Misha yilu shnet tinukot. Somebody that has 2 babies, right? Again, or we're talking about like what Yisachar said. We're talking about a mohel that he has to do Brit Milah on 2 different children, right? One of them is supposed to be done on Shabbat. One of them is on Sunday, right? Or different families, or of the same family, but we're just talking about twins, and one was born on Shabbat, and one was born mamash towards the end of Shabbat, and one of them was born already Motzei Shabbat. So it says, "Echad mulo echad Shabbat, echad mulo b'Shabbat." V'shachach, you made a mistake. Umalet shelachar Shabbat b'Shabbat. You went and you did the Brit Milah, the one on Sunday, you did it on Shabbat. So says the Gemara, right? Chayav, you're going to be chayav chatat. Why? You're mechalel Shabbat, right? You're mechalel Shabbat. When a person does Brit Milah, it's chilul Shabbat. You made a chabura, okay? Now here, even though you were toeh bidvar mitzvah, which means you made a mistake in doing a mitzvah, right? And therefore you didn't do the Brit Milah, right? Because at the end of the day, it wasn't this time of the Brit Milah yet. Still, you should be chayav. Right? However, though, what happens if Shabbat? What happens if one you had to do on Friday and one you had to do on Shabbat? So again, the same case, either one mohel for 2 different types of families, or 2 different families. One was born on Friday afternoon, mamash 10 minutes before, right? Or 5 minutes before Shkia, 10 minutes before Shkia by candlelighting time, and the other one was already into Shabbat. So it says, and you made a mistake. You went and you did the Friday one on Shabbat. Rabbi Eliezer says you're going to be chayav, right? Chayav chatat. And Rabbi Yoshua says you're going to be patur. Why? Mishum toeh b'dvar mitzvah. So now 1 second. These children, yesh lehem kitzpah, which means you know that it's only going to be 1 child for Shabbat and 1 child for after Shabbat, and 1 child before Shabbat, 1 child on Shabbat. Meaning that there is a fixed amount. We're not talking about in general children. We're talking about these childs, right? There is a fixed amount. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Ami says Rabbi Ami, Hacha ma'eskina, what are we dealing with? Kegon shekadamu malav shel erev Shabbat b'Shabbat. What happened was that you went and you did the Brit Milah of the Erev Shabbat on Shabbat in itself, before the Brit Milah of the one which is done on Shabbat. Because you're already busy with the one on the Shabbat. And therefore, since both of them are in front of you, and you know that one of them is already got there, you're considered Tarul Bidvar Mitzvah. And once you're Tarul Bidvar Mitzvah, you're Patur from a Chatat, which means once you're busy doing a Mitzvah, your mind is preoccupied, you can't pay attention anymore, so therefore you're going to be exempt. Hacha, but here in the other case, when we're talking about emuret tzibur, you first did the shechita at the beginning before bringing the limbs. So since you came and you did it at the beginning, you still weren't doing a mitzvah yet. You just came and you slaughtered a sacrifice, which you weren't supposed to do. That's why you're going to be chayav, and it's not considered toeh bidvar mitzvah. Meaning like this, according to Rabbi Yoshua, toeh bidvar mitzvah, meaning if you make a mistake when you're doing a mitzvah, you're exempt. However, though, that's only when you're busy doing a mitzvah. So in the case of the slaughtering, and then you're bringing the emurim, you first have to slaughter. There, when you're slaughtering, you're not doing the mitzvah, you're going to be chayav. But in the case of the child, since you went and you did the Brit Milah of the first one, so therefore you were busy doing the one of the Erev Shabbat on Shabbat, and then you did the one, so therefore what happens is that you were busy doing a mitzvah, so then you're going to be exempt, because you were busy doing the mitzvah. You were already in the mitzvah. So there's a difference between whether you're already doing the mitzvah or not. If you're in the middle of doing a mitzvah and now you make a mistake, you're toeh bidvar mitzvah, you're exempt. But if you didn't do it, you weren't busy doing a mitzvah yet, and then you make a mistake, then you're going to be chayav.
Also like doing the Shabbat Sunday, you are Hayav. Yeah. And Friday, Saturday.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Very good. So says the Gemara, Ihachiv, so now let's see the other part. Rabbi Meir says, Afa shochel l'shem imurei tzibur patur. If you're going to do slaughtering for imurei tzibur, you're going to be patur. Afa gav de kadim v'shachtin l'imurei tzibur risha, even though you did the shechita first. V'atan Rav Chia taught ma'achal me'avel arov, right? Which means this is a place. Avel arov. Amar Rabbi Meir, says Rabbi Meir, lo nechleku Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yoshua al shayulo shtet tinokot. Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yoshua don't argue on the case of the two children. Echal amul berev Shabbat, echal amul b'Shabbat. On the for one child for Friday, one child for Shabbat, they have to do brit milah. And you made a mistake and you forgot and you do the brit milah of the erev Shabbat on Shabbat. You're going to be chayav. So what's the machloka between them? On two children, one of them was on Sunday and one of them is on Shabbat, and you forgot and you did the one of the Sunday on Shabbat. So Rabbi Eliezer says you're going to be chayav, and Rabbi Yoshua says you're going to be patur. So you see from here, the difference between the Reisha and the Seifa, the former part and the latter part is, in the Reisha, we're talking about when you did the Brit Milah on two children, right? Because that's what he says over here, because both of them, it's already the 8th day. And you did the Brit Milah, right, on it. And then afterwards, you do the Brit Milah afterwards. And therefore, you're going to be Chayav Chatat, right? Because after you already did the Brit Milah, right, you're not going to be busy anymore doing the mitzvah. So it's not considered Torah B'dvar mitzvah. And in the Seifa, right, the second child still didn't get the 8th day. So for sure, he didn't make a mistake and he didn't do the Brit Milah on both. So therefore, he just made a mistake between the children. So because of that, since he still didn't do the Brit Milah on the Shabbat yet, it's considered he's Tarud B'dvar mitzvah. And therefore, he's going to be Patur. So it comes out that it's Mefurash in the Braita that according to Rabbi Meir, if the mitzvah was already done, there's no Tirdah anymore. There's no busy. Meaning, we now just flipped everything that we mentioned before. Before we thought that in Shitat Rabbi Yoshua, that when you started doing a mitzvah, and now you're in the middle, now you're preoccupied. Once you're preoccupied, you're going to be exempt if you make a mistake later. Why? Because once you started doing the mitzvah, you're busy. Your mind is busy. So now you're going to make a mistake. It's okay. Here we're seeing the exact opposite. In the case of the Friday and the Shabbat, for sure you're going to be chayav. There's nothing what to talk about. Right? You remember the case of Friday and Shabbat. One child born on Friday, one child born on Shabbat. You made a mistake and you did the Brit Milah of the Friday one on Shabbat. For sure you're going to be chayav. What are we talking about? The one on Shabbat and Sunday. And you made the one on Sunday on Shabbat. In that case, there's a machloka between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Eliezer says you're going to be chayav, and Rabbi Yoshua says you're going to be patur. So you see from here in this case, that Rabbi Yoshua says, no, because once you finish doing the mitzvah, you're done. You're not tarud anymore. You're not busy anymore. It's only before doing the mitzvah that you're busy, not afterwards. After you do the mitzvah, that's it. Your mind is clear. Okay? So it's the exact opposite of what we said. So says the Gemara, is it logical? Mahatam over there, when you did the Brit Milah of Sunday on Shabbat, you didn't do a mitzvah at all. The law of mitzvah. If you take a child, a newborn child, and after 7 days you did a Brit Milah, did you do a mitzvah? It's not a mitzvah. It's not Brit Milah. Brit Milah is 8 days minimum. 8 days has to be done. You understand? So you did it on the 7th day. You didn't do a mitzvah. So there, Rabbi Yoshua says you're going to be patur. So heicha dekavi mitzvah mechayev. So in a place where you did do a mitzvah, you're going to be chayav. Which means like this. I'm going to ask you a question. The first child that was born on Friday, when was his Brit Milah supposed to be done? No. He was born on Friday. Friday. Remember, when you're counting the 8 days, it always comes out the same day, right? Because the day that he's born is already the first day. So if he's born on Friday, Shabbat, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is the 8th day.
So the
right?
is the 9th. So it also is
but it's still it's still a mitzvah though. But it's still a
mitzvah.
mitzvah. No, because why? Because it's still a mitzvah, which means like this. One more time. Yeah, one more time. Right now, if a person was born on Shabbat, but it was supposed to be on Sunday, meaning there was on Shabbat, whether it's because of C-section or because of Motzei Shabbat, when is the Brit Milah? Sunday. If he comes on Shabbat and he does the Brit Milah, is that a mitzvah or not a mitzvah?
It's not a mitzvah.
It's not a mitzvah. Why? Because it's before 8 days.
But
it's not a mitzvah.
The other one is, yes, it's a mitzvah.
Because he was, but it doesn't matter. But it's 8 days is a minimum.
It's the minimum. The mitzvah is
minimum. For example, I'm going to ask you a question. Right? A child has jaundice.
Okay.
Yeah, this actually happened to both my children. Both my children had jaundice. Yeah, and both my children were in an incubator. And in certain cases, you have to actually wait 7 days, right, from the time that they become cured, which means that when they become better, now you count 7 days, 24-hour period. So my son, Hillel, came out of the incubator, I think it was at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on a Monday. So the next Monday, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, or maybe we did it at 5 o'clock, I don't remember, it was 4:30, I don't remember exactly what, We did the Brit Milah in the afternoon. It was still before the nighttime. It was the summertime. So it's still before nighttime. You have to do it during the afternoon. So you do it in the same day. If, for example, it would have come out on Monday night, so then you have to do it Tuesday morning. So that 1 week after. So he didn't do Brit Milah on the 8th day. You did Brit Milah on the 12th day. We did it, I think it was. Or 13th day. I don't remember how much it was. Understand? Depends when they. So that's when, whether it's because of jaundice, whether it's because of a sickness, or for example, let's say Chas v'Shalom, Bar Minan, a person didn't have a Brit Milah at all. Yeah, it comes now the 20th day. You're going to tell me there's not a mitzvah to do a Brit Milah? There's a mitzvah every single second. Every single moment there's a mitzvah to do a Brit Milah. It's not the proper time to do it on Shabbat. It doesn't push off Shabbat, but it's a mitzvah. So says the Gemara, is it logical? Over there, when you did Brit Milah on Shabbat, and it was on a Sunday, baby, you didn't do a mitzvah, and you're still going to be patur. You're going to tell me now, in a case where you did do a mitzvah, where you did the Erev Shabbat one on Shabbat, that you're going to be chayav? Doesn't make sense. For sure, you should be patur. Understood? Yeah? The first one is that if right now, on the case of the Shabbat, the Sunday baby, and you did it on Shabbat, you're going to be patur, right? Because at the end of the day, you were toeh bidon mitzvah, you made a mistake, right? And after 7 days, and you did the Brit Milah, it's still going to be patur. That's according to Rabbi Yeshua. So kavachom, if you actually did a mitzvah, they're going to be patur. You understand? So Amri Devrei Rabbi Yana, he says Rabbi Yana, Reisha kigon sekadam umal shel Shabbat berev Shabbat. No, it was a mistake. The one of Shabbat baby, you did it on Erev Shabbat. That means you did the Shabbat baby 1 day early. It was not a Sunday you did it on Shabbat. You did a Shabbat baby on Friday. You did it 1 day early. Okay? Ayin bet amubet, 72b. Shelo nitzna Shabbat litachot. Because now, once you already did that, you're not supposed to push off Shabbat at all. Right? And therefore, when you're going to come and you're going to do now the Brit Milah of the Friday baby on the Shabbat, right? Now it's going to become a problem. Right? The Seifa is talking about Nitna Shabbat lidachot. So you should push off the Shabbat. Hacha, but over here, had Nitna Shabbat lidachot, it's the Korban Tzibur. Right? The Shabbat was pushed off for Korban Tzibur. Remember, certain Korbanot Tzibur, Shabbat pushes off. Right? Shabbat is pushed off. Right? Whether it's going to be a Tamid or a Musaf. Right? Well, what do we say the Tamid? Tamid is Tamid Shel Shachar, Tamid Shel Ben Arbayim, which is the Korban Tamid. Right? The sacrifice. Right? So you do one in the morning, one in the nighttime. That's Shachrit and Mincha. Yeah, two a day. 2 a day. Then you have also the Korban Musaf. Right? The Korban Musaf, right, was what? Is a Korban Musaf. Right? There's a Korban also of Musaf. That's why if you remember, we said that there was 200 Korbanot that are done already on Shabbatot. Because if you remember, just the Tamid Shel Shachar, Tamid Shel Ben Arbayim is twice. If there's 50 Shabbatot, that's already 100. Then you have the Korban Musaf. Right? Also, you're going to have 2. So therefore, if you have 2, right, in the Korban Musaf, we say in the Musaf, right? We say 2. So it's 2, and there's 50 Shabbatot, that's another 100. So therefore it comes out, there's 200 Korbanot brought on Shabbatot every single year. We just learned that in the Daf Yomi. Right? We just learned that. You remember when Rabbi Akiva said, what are you talking about? There was 200 every single, right? So for sure it's going to push off the Shabbat. It was a Hillel Azaken. Right? You remember that I think it was Hillel that he answered that. When they said, does the Korban of the Arba Asar, the Chagiga, and the Korban Pesach, does it push off the Shabbat, or the Tamid push off Shabbat, right? So we went and we said, of course it does. So the Korban Pesach, we learned from Bemuado. Okay? So it says over here like this. So he says, here, we know that the Shabbat was going to be pushed off. So here, it's not going to be pushed off because you made a mistake. Once you made a mistake in the Brit Milah, that you did the Shabbat one on Friday, so now you're not supposed to do anything on Shabbat then. Okay? Right? Because you're not supposed to do anything. So Amalei Rav Ashi Rav Kahana says Rav Ashi to Rav Kahana Hachanami. So to here had a nitna Shabbat lidachot. It's the dinokot de'alma, right? The Shabbat is going to be pushed off by the regular tinokot, right? By regular children. So Amalei legabe the high gavra miya lo ilitehiv. He says, yeah, but by this person it wasn't pushed off. So since there's no other tinok, there's no other child to do Brit Milah on Shabbat, he's not tarud b'mitzvah. That's why he's going to be patur from the chatat. Okay, 2 dots. All the other types of sacrifices that you did it for the Korban Pesach, if they're not going to be fitting, you're going to be chayav. And if they are fitting, so Rabbi Eliezer says you're going to be chayav, and Rabbi Yeshua says you're going to be patur. Man tana deshani le ben ru'im l'shen ru'im. Who's the tana that comes and he says that there's a difference between whether it's fitting or not fitting? Rabbi Shimon here. It's Rabbi Shimon. The time we learned in the Braita, whether there's sacrifices which are fitting or not fitting, or anybody that does a shechita for the murim of the tzibur. Remember, the murim and tzibur are for the limbs of the animal which are going onto the mizbeach. You're going to be patur. These words will be mean. Amar Rabbi Shimon says Rabbi Shimon, Lenech leku Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yeshua shenuhin shechayav. Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Eliezer are not arguing that if it's not fitting, you're going to be chayav. Al menech lekua, what's a machloket? Only if it's fitting. So Rabbi Eliezer says you're going to be chayav chatat, and Rabbi Yeshua says you're going to be patur. So it comes out that our Mishnah is like Rabbi Shimon. But according to Rabbi Meir, even if you did slaughtering for the Pesach, also for other zivachim which are not fitting, right, you're going to be patur according to Rabbi Meir. So Amar Rabbi Vaya, Amar Rabbi Lazar, says Rabbi Vaya, name Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Meir used to exempt even an egel, even a calf of the zivchei shlamim, even of the peace offerings that they did it for a korban Pesach. And we don't say that it was going to be patur, right? So for example, a keves shte shanim, 2 years, right? That you can make a mistake between whether it's a 1-year-old or a 2-year-old, but an egel, nobody can make a mistake, right? So therefore, that's why he says it's going to be patur, which means like this. Remember, a korban Pesach has to be brought as a male, has to be brought with a sheep, and it has to be brought, right, within the first year. If it's after 1 year, it's a problem. Now, a tzon or whatever, or let's say, for example, different types of animals, you can make a mistake if it's 1 year or 2 years. But an egel, a calf, everyone knows it's a calf, it's a baby. Everyone knows, you see it. So therefore, in such a case where the person came and he made a mistake and he brought this calf, right? He says over here, right? Bechol korban patar Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says it's going to be patur even with a calf. Why? Because a person can make a mistake. If it's with another one, then no. But here, a person can make a mistake. So Amar Rabbi Zera Rabbi Vai says Rabbi Zera to Rabbi Vai. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan says Modeh Rabbi Meir the Baalei Mumim. Rabbi Meir also agrees that if somebody did a shechita for a balmum, right, for a korban Pesach, he's going to be chayav chatat. And the reason why is because nobody would ever think that a balmum is kosher for Pesach. Remember, balmum means it has a defect. If an animal has a defect, right, a broken arm, I don't know what, all these different. Nobody's going to think you could bring that as a sacrifice. It's a disgrace. What, you're bringing that as a sacrifice to a Kodesh Baruch Hu? Yeah?
Like the one of Alexander.
Yeah. But there was a machloket there, because there he did it in such a small little area in the eye that there was a machloket that for us it was considered a problem, and for them it was not considered a problem. Okay? For the goyim. Meaning it wasn't considered a defect. Because it was in like the cataracts of the eye. So Amalei, so he comes and he says, lo tarid behu. He says, no. When to do with the balmum, it's pasul, and therefore you can't bring it as any korban. So that's why it's not considered a toeh bidvar mitzvah. But by a regular animal, an egel of a shlamim, you are busy doing a mitzvah. So since you're busy doing a mitzvah, that's why we said that it could be a problem. So Bamine Rav Nachman asks Rav from Rav Nachman, Chulin Nishum Pesach, Mali Amar Rabbi Meir. What about if somebody took chulin, a regular animal, and he slaughtered it as a korban Pesach? What does Rabbi Meir say? Amalei, he says, Potere ya Rabbi Meir, afilu chulin l'shem Pesach. Rabbi Meir said it's going to be exempt even for chulin for Pesach. The Amar Rabbi Yochanan says, Modeh ya Rabbi Meir beBaalei Mumim. That Rabbi Meir was modeh by Baalei Mumim. Baalei Mumim lo michalfe, hani michalfe. He says, no. Baalei Mumim, animals which have defects, you don't get them mixed up between each other, right? Which means that you're never going to think that it's going to be kosher, right, to bring it as a korban. But here, chulin, you could mix up a regular animal with an animal of kodshim. Remember, kodshim means an animal that you consecrated for a korban. Chulin means a non-consecrated animal. There you can make a mistake. A balmum and not balmum, you see it. You see the blemish. You're not going to make a mistake. Here, you will make a mistake. So the reasoning of Rabbi Meir is going to be because of switching the animals. Says Rabbi Vai name Rabbi Lazar. Right? You see that the entire reasoning of Rabbi Meir is not because they're going to get them mixed up, but rather because he's tarud, he's doing a mitzvah, and therefore he's going to be busy doing a mitzvah. So Amalei, so he comes and he answers him, Tarid afagav de lo michlaf, or michlaf afagav de lo tarid. It's true, it's both of them. Either because you're busy, even though you're not going to mix them up, or you're going to mix them up even though you're not busy. This comes to exclude blemishes because you're not going to get them mixed up and you're not busy. Meaning by a blemished animal, you would never get it mixed up because you could see it. Plus, you're not busy doing a mitzvah because you know you can never bring a blemished animal. But any other time, either one of the two reasons, whether getting them mixed up or because of you're busy, it's good enough, according to him, to become patur. So Yativ Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Shmuel, Yitzchak, right? Akilad Rabbi Shmuel, right? By Rabbi Yitzchak was sitting Rabbi Zera, Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Yitzchak, right? By Rabbi Shmuel, by Rabbi Yitzchak, right? Yativ V'Kamen, they were saying, Amar Shmuel Lakish, Nitchalef li shaput shel notar b'shaput shel tzali. Imagine right now somebody got mixed up between a shaput. A shaput is like a skewer. You know what a skewer is? Yeah, a skewer of meat. Pinchito, the carne. A skewer, right? What happened was that they had a meat of kodesh, which was notar. Notar means leftovers. You're not allowed to eat leftovers, right? If it was leftover and they didn't eat it on time, it becomes notar. You have to burn it. Beshaput shel tzali was something which was tzali that you're supposed to eat it. V'achalo, and he ate it. Chayav, you're going to be chayav chatat. Rabbi Yochanan says, Ishto nida baal, right? Chayav. Yevimto nida baal, patur. Imagine right now a person comes, right, and right, hu baal et ishto. He lives with his wife, and he nida. Yeah. So what happens? He thought that she was pure, and really she wasn't. He's going to be chayav chatat. Why? He's told b'dvar mitzvah. But if he has with his yevama, which really means that the brother died without children, and now he gets married to the sister-in-law, so now he's going to become patur, right? Why? Because he's told b'dvar mitzvah. Right? Ikadamni. Some people say koshken be'yidim chayav. For sure, he should be chayav in that case, right? In the case of the notar, of the leftover of the meat and other meat, telo asa mitzvah, because you didn't do a mitzvah at all. Meaning, in the other case, right? He's saying that listen, by a yevama, it's a mitzvah to get married to her. So you were doing a mitzvah, so you're taru b'dvar mitzvah. By your wife, there's no mitzvah here, right? So therefore, a person went and she was nida. It's a problem. So idamli. Some people say. In the case of the notar and kodesh, it's going to be patur. My time, what's the reasoning? Because there, to do with the wife, he could have asked her. He should have asked. He should ask, is she okay or not okay? So he says, but here to do with the meat, who's he going to ask? He got mixed up. He got confused. One was notar, one was kodesh. One you're allowed to eat, one you're not allowed to eat. He got confused. So who's he going to ask? So because of that, that's the reason why. Right? Yeah, also Sham Talui. Yeah, because the Sham Talui is a guilt offering, but it's dependent whether he did the Avidah or not. So he says over here, right? He says like this. Okay. So he says now as follows. Rabbi Yochanan Maishna Yevimto de Kavi Mitzvah. Ishtonami Kavi Mitzvah. Says 1 second. By your wife, it's also a mitzvah. Just like by the Yevama, it's a mitzvah. But right by the Yevama, so to by the wife, it's also going to be a mitzvah. Right? Why? Pirya v'rivya. Right? There's a procreating. So answers the Gemara, v'ishto meuberet. She's already pregnant. V'ika simchat ona. You have the mitzvah. Positive commandment, ona. Every time there's a mitzvah. The mitzvah of ona. Right? The mitzvah that a person has to give that which he's obligated to his spouse. So answers the Gemara, shelo b'shat onata. There's no mitzvah. It's not her ona. He doesn't have to do it now. Rava says, a person's always obligated to come and to have right to be with his wife, to make her happy with dvar mitzvah. And so samuch levesta. There we're talking about right samuch levesta, which is in time, right, that there's no mitzvah. Why? Because there it's asur, right? Because it could be that she's going to come and have her flow, and therefore it's going to be a problem. So says Gemara, so the same halacha should apply to the Yivama. So the Gemara answers, Yivimto baziz mina. Ishto lo baziz mina. Right? The Yavam that's having with the Yivama, right? She's embarrassed. So therefore, right, sorry, he's embarrassed to ask her. So therefore he's embarrassed. It's lo naim. It's the first time, he's just getting married to her. So it's lo naim to come and start asking her, this, that. So therefore he's embarrassed to ask. So he just doesn't. Then, it's a problem. She was she was not pure. So he says, but his wife, he's not embarrassed of her. He should ask her. Right? You should have asked her what's going on. Right? What's the matzav? What's going on? There's a whole question about that. Why didn't she tell him? It's true. It says over here, right? 26. Let's see here. Rashi, he just says that. Let me see. 27. Rashi. No, he just says that he's embarrassed, so therefore she just kept quiet. Yeah, no, because there it's also talking about samuch levesta. It wasn't mamash 100% asur. Samuch levesta means that it's in the same time frame where she's supposed to receive, but she didn't receive yet. Meaning she's not right now, right? And he dies. So much she's supposed to receive. Okay, she's supposed to, right? Like for example, tonight this is the night when she's supposed to receive, according to the 30 days or according to whatever it is. This is she's supposed to receive now, but she didn't actually see. If she saw now, you're right. She had to say. Okay. So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yochanan, come on. Who does Rabbi Yochanan go like? Ilema Rabbi Yosef, you're going to tell me he goes like Rabbi Yosef. It's as we learned in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yosef Omer Yom Tov Rishon Shel Chag Shechal Yom Shabbat. When Yom Tov of Sukkot falls out on Shabbat, and you forgot and you took out the lulav l'reshut rabim, v'shechavoti the lulav l'reshut rabim, patur, you're going to be patur from chatat. Mimner shotzi b'reshut, you took it out with permission. Dilma shanahatem dizmano baul. There, you're. It's a time. You want to do the mitzvah, you forgot that it's Shabbat, you come, you took it out, you made a mistake. It has to be Rabbi Yoshua of korbanot. So also the same thing there. To do with bringing the korban Pesach. Also the time is framing, you're going to be all confused. Rather, it's going to be like the case of Yoshua by the children about doing the Brit Milah or not. So says the Gemara, there also, that means in all these times, it's always a time frame that the time frame is causing that a person should become confused. And therefore it's going to be a problem. But rather, Rabbi Yoshua the Truma. Rather, it has to be like the case of Rabbi Yoshua in Truma. The Tanam, we learned in the Mishnah in Trumot. What happens if a person is a Kohen? He's eating Trumot, and then he found out that he's the son of a divorced woman or of a Chalutza, which means that he's a Halal. He's not a Kohen. He's not allowed to eat anymore. What happens? Rabbi Eliezer mechayev keren v'chomesh. Rabbi Eliezer says he's going to be chayav keren and chomesh. Yeah, and he comes and he says over here, right? Rabbi Eliezer says you're going to be chayav keren and chomesh. Keren is a principal, chomesh is an additional fifth, and Rabbi Yoshua says you're going to be exempt. So says the Gemara. So if so, dilma keder Rabbi Barabaye, maybe like Rabbi Barabaye b'truma better Pesach. Maybe we're also talking about better Pesach over there, which means over here maybe we're talking about over here a fourth and last case that maybe be'emet, if a person of Yeshua here says you're going to be patur from paying back because you were told bidvar mitzvah, he thought it was a kohen when he ate it. So says the Gemara, no, also maybe it's zman bahul, which means that any time where the time is going to be very, very pressing, that's why he's going to say you're patur, because you're not thinking with your head, because you have to do it quickly, you have to do something. Inami, if so, shane truma dikra avodah. Truma is different in the fact that eating truma is also called an avodah. And avodah rachmana achshar, by avodah korbanot, the Torah said he's going to be kasher, right? Titnamas, we learned in the Mishnah, if a Kohen was bringing a sacrifice, and then he found out he's a ben kosher, everything is going to be pasul. Rabbi Yoshua says he's going to be kasher, machshir. And we asked, what's the reasoning of Rabbi Yoshua? As it says in the pasuk, Barech Hashem chelo, ufoal yadav tirtzeh. Chelo is ki'ilu chalalav, kohanim chalalim, which means that we learn from this pasuk that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blessed that even the halal, that even if the halal brought the sacrifices, it's going to be kosher. Not from now onwards, but whatever he already brought is going to be good. So just like whatever he brought is going to be good, so too the truma, which is the eating of the truma, you're going to be patur according to Rabbi Yoshua. So says the Gemara, truma, where do we find such a concept that truma is called avodah? The time we learned in Braita, Maaseh Rabbi Tarfon shelo ba'emesh. Right, le Bet HaMidrash. There was a story with Rabbi Tarfon that he didn't come in the nighttime to Bet HaMidrash. In the morning, he found Rabbi Gamliel. Amalo Rabbi Gamliel told Rabbi Tarfon, why didn't you come last night to the Bet HaMidrash? Right? Where do you think I learned it from? Yeah, Baba Chaki, the next time I'm going to tell you, why didn't you come last night? You learn it from the Gemara. Yeah, you don't come even once, you have to ask, why didn't you come? Yeah? So he says, Amalo, he says, Avodah avati. I did avodah last night. Right? And therefore I didn't come. Amalo, he told him, Kol dvarecha divrei tema. Avodah bizman hazeh minayin. He says, what? There's no Bet HaMikdash. What do you mean you were doing avodah? Avodah of what? There's no Bet HaMikdash. You're doing services of what? Amalo, he told him, it says in the pasuk, right? Ein Gimel Amud Aleph, 73A1, just on the top, just to the two dots. Avodat matana eten kiunatchem. V'azar karevimat. Avodat matana. The matana that you give to the Kohen, which is a truma, is called an avodah. So therefore, asu achilat truma bigulin b'avodat b'mikdash. They made the eating of the truma and gvulin, right, inside of the Bet HaMikdash area, meaning inside of the gvulin, right, like the service of the Bet HaMikdash. Therefore, I was doing an avodah. I was eating truma, and eating truma is called an avodah. And therefore, that's why he says that it's considered an avodah. So according to Shitat Rabbi Yoshua, the fact that a person comes and he was eating truma, right, and he thought he was a Kohen, and then he found out that he's not a Kohen, it's not because he was Torah b'dvar mitzvah, but rather because the halal is allowed to do that. Because even if the halal came and he made a mistake and he did a service, it's still going to be kosher. Barech Hashem chelo ufol yadav tirtzeh. We continue Bezrat Hashem tomorrow.